Hi, Stacy. Good to see you.
Good to see you as
There's a difference, I think, between the agency paying attention and the public paying attention. Some of what we've talked about here today is this absolutely fundamental link between nutrition and health. I mean, I think the folks here today are really aware of it, but we can be doing so much more to make sure that we are ensuring all Americans are aware of that vital connection and how they with the steps that they can take that are within their own power to support better health through stronger nutrition. You may not know this, but through the 16 federal nutrition programs that I have the opportunity to work on at USDA, we touch 1 in 4 Americans throughout the course of the year. So 1 in 4 Americans are counting on USDA food assistance programs like SNAP, WIC, school food, to help meet their basic food needs. So that's an incredible platform for us to promote good nutrition, its relationship to health, and to use our platform really to drive those better health outcomes.
Welcome to the Catalyst of Change Women Leaders in Science seminar series. This seminar is in English with interpretation available in Spanish, French, and Hindi. You may select the language of your preference at the Zoom bar menu. We invite you to follow us in LinkedIn, YouTube, and social media using the hashtag Women in Science for the Catalyst of Change Women Leaders in Science seminar series. We are hearing today from an outstanding food policy leader, Stacy Dean, who is the Carbonell Family Executive Director. Stacy Dean will have a conversation with Lorena Batista, quantitative geneticist with a background in both research and applied breeding at CIMMYT headquarters. We invite you to submit your questions and comments on the Slido tool to be addressed in the Q&A session right after the conversation. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Brian Govars, Director General of CIMMYT, to officially open the event and introduce our distinguished speaker, Stacy Dean. Dr. Govars, over to you.
Thank you, Isabel, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome once again in this webinar of our Catalyst of Change Women Leaders in Science series. At CIMMYT in 2023, actually, we launched a TED Talk meets Fireside Chat style series on women leaders because we want more women leaders in science institutions like ours. Our goal is that the one of a broader representation and gender balance in science. And we need to provide more opportunities for all of us to hear from women leaders' life journeys, lessons, and insights. Because remember, you can't be what you can see. And we're convinced that many of us can learn from those different leaders and bring together our own leadership style. That's why in this series, we highlight women who are leaders in all sorts of capacities, fields, and disciplines, because we believe that leadership styles come in many different forms. By the way, stay tuned because this series is going to morph into its next phase very, very soon. But for today, we have Stacy Dean, who is a true catalyst of change. She's today the Carbonell Family Executive Director and champions in that institute its mission to change the world through the power of food. And if this is not aligned with our 2030 CIMMYT strategy, then what is? She is a renowned national food policy leader with more than 30 years of experience in the government and nonprofit sectors. She has dedicated herself to improving nutrition assistance for struggling Americans and tackling barriers ingrained within nutrition programs. Her distinguished career actually includes her most recent role as Executive Director of the Carbonell Family Foundation and as Deputy Undersecretary for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Food, Nutrition, and Consumer Services, where she led the administration's work on federal nutrition programs. In this role, Dean was instrumental in strengthening the agency's efforts on food and nutrition security, as well as local food systems and resilience. Prior to her role at USDA as the Deputy Undersecretary for the U.S. Department, Dean served as the Vice President for Food Assistance Policy at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, where she led their research and advocacy work on federal nutrition programs as well as other safety net programs. Dean also has authored scores of papers and analysis on federal nutrition programs, testified before Congress, and has been frequently quoted in the media, including outlets like the New York Times, Politico, and others. Our Through Catalyst of Change will be interviewed by our own Catalyst of Change, Lorena Batista. And Lorena is a quantitative geneticist with a background in both research and applied breeding. She earned her PhD in genetics and plant breeding, where she specialized in genomic selection for polyploid crops and stochastic simulations for breeding programs. Following her doctorate, she worked as a postdoctoral researcher in computational genomics, focusing on statistical modeling and simulations. And today, she is our one and own leader within the Breeding for Tomorrow initiative or science program, as part of the CGIR, supporting the breeding teams at multiple centers, including SIP, and contributing to the development of bioflow and analytical platforms developed to aid plant breeders across the CG centers and their national partners. I am sure that we will enjoy and learn a lot from Stacy's outstanding leadership experience. Without further introduction, I'd like to give a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker and hand it over to her. Welcome, Stacy, and over to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me here this morning. And I just want to extend a personal thanks to Bram and Isabel for their warm welcome. And I really look forward to my chat with Lorena later this morning. It's also an honor to be amongst such an esteemed group of people, scientists, who use their skills and knowledge to make our world a better place. And honestly, I'm humbled and a bit daunted to be speaking to this group. Scientists and science institutions, help us to understand our world. You solve problems, inform decisions, and you do the work required to create a better future. And I'm sure, like you, pretty frustrated with the moment that we're here in the United States right now, a moment where some policy officials are devaluing the incredible work that all scientists or scientists of all kinds do. Now, of course, this isn't new. Science has a long history of struggle with culture, politics, and even funding. Galileo comes to mind for me as someone who centuries ago pushed for scientific process to understand the world and made discoveries that were unwelcome. I'm sure he wasn't the first, and the scientists who are struggling now will not be the last, but I wanted to make sure to acknowledge this incredibly difficult time. And it's certainly a time where we need you more than ever and where a community like this is so important. So thank you very much for your work. So as Brent said, I am now leading the Global Food Institute, or GFI, as I might call it for short, at the George Washington University. It's a new initiative launched in partnership with a chef and humanitarian called Jose Andres at George Washington. And I've been working at the intersection of food and policy for most of my career. As Bram said, I was most recently at the US Department of Agriculture under the Biden administration. And my work has really given me, I believe, a deep understanding of the challenges and opportunities in our global food system. So I thought I'd talk about my work and my hopes for what we will do here at GFI, because in many respects, I think that expresses the kind of leader leader that I am and leadership that I want to offer. And then I hope through Q&A, we can dig into some more detailed perspectives about my career and lessons learned, and really can't wait to hear from all of you about what you're going through. So I think most here are probably incredibly familiar with the phrase global food system, and a phrase I also like to use is farm to fork. But it's so much more than a farm and a simple fork. Our food system is complex. It's a web of activities across global supply chains. And at every point in this web, there are people doing the work: farmers harvesting crops, truck drivers delivering fruits and vegetables, workers packaging items to send to a grocery store, children at a school lunchroom, a family at a dinner table. And behind the scenes, there are policymakers and philanthropists, innovators and scientists, community organizers and advocates on a constant journey to make food better for people and for the earth. So the Global Food Institute was founded on the premise that food made in this system has a real impact on people and our ability to feel connected to each other and our own humanity. Yet food is also at the heart of nearly all the world's most pressing challenges. We know about rising food prices, watched documentaries, or lived the experience of how food is grown, seen the dramatic photos of long lines at food banks and other charities during the pandemic, heard from more illustrious speakers than I about the changing climate and regions of the world where there's serious and widespread hunger. That's all inspired and informed consumers about how our food system works. So the question is, and I think why so many of us do this work, but why GFI was founded is our food system performing optimally and according to our shared values? Is this the food system that we want? Do we want a food system where so many people don't have access to healthy, affordable food, even though there is enough food grown to feed everyone? Where by 2050, we could run out of land to feed a growing population, where climate change easily wipes out crops that are essential to where the food system has the power to harm and to heal, as both a contributor to climate change and a source for its solutions. Where food can nourish, but can also drive so many health problems, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, that threaten to make our lives shorter and more painful than previous generations. And where fear and misinformation about food and how it's produced threaten to win the day. Where food is a weapon, where food hardship, hunger, or starvation are not looming threats, but the lived reality of millions fighting to survive in conflict zones around the world. This is not the kind of food system I want, and I don't think it's the kind of food system any of us want. So I know that my colleagues and I at the Global Food Institute have really been inspired by Jose Andres, who again helped to found us, who regularly speaks about the challenges he sees while delivering meals in disaster zones. He often says that the best of humanity shows up after a disaster. That experience inspires him to believe that food contains possibilities that can provide simple solutions to many complex problems. And I believe that too. We can and we must build a food system that we want for the world. And we will do that. We must remake it given the pressing challenges that we have. But the question before us today is not really should we, but how do we? And who gets a seat at the table in remaking our future? That question and the value around that question is part of what inspired me to join GFI. My work in food and nutrition access has been the touchstone of my career. I've had the privilege, as Bram said, to serve as the Deputy Undersecretary for USDA's Food and Nutrition Services, contributing to evidence-based policy and meaningful ideas on how to deliver food and nutrition policy to tens of millions of Americans. And prior to joining USDA, I served at an organization called the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a nonprofit, nonpartisan research and analysis organization, really dedicated to using evidence-based solutions and policy to improve the world for those who are most disadvantaged. And so, I focused on advancing policy and strategy on issues impacting families from low-income households, forged partnerships with policymakers, academics, and nonprofit organizations at all levels to inform policy and provide guidance on implementing federal nutrition programs. And while it can seem a little, it can seem, not particularly hopeful right now that evidence can inform good policy, my decades of experience tell me that it really can, and the science that you all do is so important to ensuring that we leverage policy for the better. So it means I've spent much of my career understanding that the food system isn't fair or equitable, and you see up close how policy dictates who has access to food and who doesn't, and how food can truly make a difference in people's lives, how it's one of the most fundamental expressions of their basic well-being. I don't take this lightly. Food should be for everyone to have and enjoy no matter what their circumstances. Now, when you bite into your sandwich or falafel or whatever other yummy dish you eat at lunch, you may not be considering the entire global food system of people. Yet we can identify the clear role of food in our personal lives. At birthday parties and family reunions, we laugh and share with our families across homemade dishes. We travel and learn new places and explore cultures by eating like the locals do. For me, after a good trip, I rave about the incredible food that I ate and the flavors or traditions that I experienced. If someone's in need, friends and neighbors show up at your front door with a casserole or some other dish. We express our love, care, and joy through food, which is pretty powerful. But when you think about the food on your dinner plate as a system, as something that's passed through the hands of many people to get to your fork, you start to understand that food is more than just our favorite restaurant or the comfort food that mom makes. It isn't just what we eat, it's a reflection of who we are, tied closely to our individual and social values. And if food reflects who we are, then we must hold up a mirror to our global food system, because the hard truth is that the current system doesn't work for everyone. 2.8 billion people across the world aren't able to afford a healthy diet. 2.4 million agricultural workers we rely on to harvest our food here earn some of the lowest wages in the US, with some farm workers bringing in as little as $20,000 a year for backbreaking work amid rising grocery and cost of 11.5 million people struggle to access an adequate diet at some point during 2023, including more than 7 million children. So the current food system is at the root of many environmental problems the world is facing, including deforestation, biodiversity loss, and nearly 25% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So it's easy and understandable to be overwhelmed by these massive challenges, but building the food system we want starts with understanding systemic inequities that are baked into our system, and not just studying them, but seeking to explain them and take actions to correct them. The problem before us is certainly not a lack of creative thinking to solve the individual issues. Many people are working hard, so represented by those of you on this call, to apply solutions and innovation to these issues. The food system is simultaneously responding to broader pressures and objectives like rising grocery store prices or fluctuations in the commodity markets. Or the withdrawal of hundreds of millions of dollars in humanitarian food assistance through a much longer lens, including feeding billions by 2050. And the food system is made up of a diverse array of stakeholders: farmers, processors, investors, consumers, governments, NGOs, traders, right? The list goes on, who all have their own roles and motivations. The problem is that silos within the system create costs and risks and hold innovations back from scaling to a meaningful level and working together in an integrated way. While each stakeholder may understand their role within the food system and be acting in a way that works according to their motivations and understandings of risk reward, their view and connection across the overall system is limited. The limited view, in my opinion, is driven by that traditional analysis of our food system is through a productivity lens, not a policy lens, and not necessarily an eater's lens. Mayors, governors, and other policymakers may not be considering whether their citizens have access to food and what policy levers they have at their disposal to build and support local agricultural economies and food distribution in a way that strengthens their communities. Yet they have the power to improve the systems in their local communities if they view the challenges in a systematic way and understand their role. True solutions require a systems perspective that assesses, and I believe that eaters, particularly those most disadvantaged, should have a seat at the table as we understand what the problems are and as we imagine what we need to build for the future. Now, the food system is a crowded table, imagine that, full of pressing concerns that cannot be overlooked: climate crisis, hunger, poverty, deteriorating public health and nutrition, a rising epidemic of diet-related diseases, just to name a few. And those who have historically been on the margin are carrying the weight of these problems, hoping for a seat at that virtual table. And I mean those struggling to afford or access food, those growing, harvesting, delivering, and preparing our food under difficult conditions, often bearing greater risks to pursue change. So Jose Andres has famously said, build longer tables, not higher walls. And I believe this captures the spirit of what we're trying to do at GFI and what I've seen, what works throughout my career. These words also have the benefit of more adeptly painting a picture of the food system that GFI envisions that we believe is achievable. We want a full table equipped with enough space and nourishment for all, not a table where everyone is forced to fight for their share, a table that breaks down silos, bringing everyone together from across the food system to envision the system that feeds us all as a public good. To meet the unprecedented challenges before us, we need to invest in smart solutions and proven policies that empower full progress. And who better to lead us in that than the next generation? So a university like GW may seem like an unexpected choice to house the work that we're doing, to drive a sort of impactful change that I'm talking about here. It's no secret that academia has a bit of an ivory tower reputation. It's often accused of being disconnected from the struggles of the real world. So can a university really move the needle on issues like hunger or climate change? And of course, we believe it can. GW is not just any university, it's the ideal workshop for building and designing our longer tables. It's located at the heart of our nation's capital, and it's a really notable institution with incredible people working all across the food system, but not necessarily together. And so we have our own work to break down silos and work together to envision a better future. But we have the capabilities, locations, and heart to support GFI in its mission for change. We're not just an academic institution, but we're also a hub that will unite different sectors and disciplines across the university to drive innovation and implement solutions. So many great ideas start with small, with a few good people around a table. And we envision that we're going to do more than that. We're going to bring more than just a few good people to our table. In teaching a new generation of students about the food system, we aim to inspire ideas and policy solutions. We are collaborating with students and faculty to find solutions and ideas for the food system across 3 pillars: policy, innovation, and humanity. These pillars are also our guiding principles as we aspire to be a champion, partner, and convener. Building tables doesn't only mean making room for new ideas and new voices. It's also a new way of looking at reaching people through food. I believe GFI needs to be spending more time in our community here in DC, our own backyard, and beyond across the world to meet with those who can bring their experience to the table. While we're housed at an academic institution, it certainly does not mean that we know everything. And again, another thing across my career I've found is being very clear that we don't know everything is an important place to start. And fortunately, we don't have to know everything. We don't strive to be an institute that only does our own research and tells the community what will work better for them. We want to learn from our community and partner with them to understand the problem and what they believe would best suit what's needed. We want to meet people where they're at and treat their experiences with humanity. There is so much to learn from the very people who are growing and producing and cooking and serving food. And that's why we are partnering with local and regional organizations, leveraging our own resources and our own power to tackle the challenges that our neighbors might be facing. And it's these experiences that can and should inform our research and work. GFI's role is that of a translator, and that's really a role I've played throughout my entire career of translating science and research, putting the experiences to paper and using it to inform and advance a sensible policy. So our 3 pillars, innovation, humanity, and policy, give us a framework to ask, are there ways to scale these ideas? How do these ideas connect to people? And in what ways can policy and our proximity to DC support it? Our location in the capital gives us this really unbelievable opportunity to convene great thinkers on government policies and programs, as well as great thinkers within communities. And bringing them together, we hope, will create an opportunity to advocate for powerful solutions from community to inform policy backed by research and innovation and inspired by humanity. So, and as we spend this time building communities, centering research and evidence-based policy and grounding our work in real-life experiences, we're also training future leaders. Again, another thing that I think has grown of increasing importance to me as I advance in my career. Our students, they can carry on with solutions to our food systems as they move from school to careers. So we here, we don't just want to educate the next Secretary of Agriculture or president to be a food leader. We want to produce a diverse pool of doctors, lawyers, teachers, business leaders, mayors, engineers, diplomats, all to see and embrace the challenges that our food system faces for the future and inspire them to lead the way, whatever their perch is, to make the change that we need. Our future relies on leadership that understands a better food system is needed across all sectors and careers. And luckily, we know how to train up the next generation of leaders and are so excited to hopefully expose thousands and thousands of GW students to what's needed here. Students come to DC to be of service. They want to be a part of policymaking and problem solving and to create the solutions. And while lots of people think of DC as maybe a cynical place, in fact, there's extraordinary hope in that desire to be a part of the policymaking process. So we want them to leave GW with a clear understanding of how research and policy and science can move the needle in our food system. So of course our work here isn't, and like all of yours, it's not a solo endeavor. It's powered by partnership with food system organizations, companies, foundations, donors, and it's clear that solutions to our most complex issues are going to require collaboration across disciplines. So my call out to you is to those with great ideas. We need you and your vision. New and old ideas are alike or welcome. To those who might want to be a partner, we want to learn from you, your organization and your work. It's our place to listen to the stories of communities and organizations already doing the work to help them transform these stories to progress. And to policymakers who've worked to build a better food system, we appreciate you. Our food system, for all its flaws, is feeding the world the best it can. But now we can imagine a new future, and your leadership is going to be critical. There is a seat for everyone at our longer table, and we invite you to join us in this journey of building the food system that we want. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Stacy. So hello, everyone. I am Lorena Batista. I'm part of CGIR's Accelerated Breeding Initiative, and I work as a quantitative genetics specialist. And Stacy, when I was invited to lead this interview, I took some time to read about your work, and I found your trajectory through food policy and public service particularly relevant to the kinds of structural conversations that are important here. So I've been looking forward to hearing more about your experience and perspectives. And I'm going to start this interview from the beginning and ask you what first drew you to this intersection of food policy and public service, and if there was a particular moment or experience early on that made you realize this was the work you wanted to dedicate yourself to.
You know, I'm not sure, when I first got a job, it was about getting a job. So I have to be honest, it was a tough time, a recession, and I was so pleased to be able to get a job as a budget analyst in our Federal Office of Management and Budget. And I would say that, so I ended up picking up the portfolio of the federal nutrition programs. And there were a couple of things about the food space. One is everybody's really pretty wonderful in the food space. It does seems to be less of an elbows out zone and more of a collaboration zone, whether it's farmers or scientists or anti-hunger advocates. And I really liked that. The second is that it is a space where people seem to stay for a long time. So we can build expertise, we can build relationships, and we can advance ideas. And third is it historically, although less so lately, it was very bipartisan politically, that the Republicans and Democrats really worked together on agriculture and nutrition. And so it was a little tucked off corner of the policy world, but it felt like a place where a lot could get done in some of the best ways possible, evidence-based policymaking. So it was a very rewarding space to be in. So I think that's why I don't know why I landed here, but that's why I stayed.
Yeah, sounds great actually. You've worked across both government and nonprofit spaces, often in leadership roles and like shaping national nutritional programs. And in these spaces, how have you seen women's representation and influence evolve
Well,
over time?
when I started, almost all the leaders were men and all the workers were women. And it has changed over time, I think, also to match changes in society. But as I've seen women emerge, I think the types of leadership have changed too, right? So I was trained under a structure that was very hierarchical, very very oriented on hard skills, I would say, which is a good thing. I was very happy to learn that way, but also am now, and also when I was young and would be sitting at a table, I did not speak unless I was invited, right? Versus now, I see a much more collaborative approach, which I think is good to have an infusion of different styles. I think some of that's gender, but it also could be a change over time. I also see women moving up, the organizations being maybe more, what's the way to say it? Supportive and helpful when they are managing caregiving responsibilities and finding places for that incredible talent when they go through times in their life where they're less able to or need more space, I guess, so I think that's also been important. And then also a real recognition of expertise that exists outside of DC and exists outside of the halls of Congress, but in fact in communities where there are extraordinary leaders who don't have the opportunity to talk to us, but we need to find ways to connect them to us.
Well, it's a good intro to my next questions. I was going to talk about like this leadership that women often have at home. And it's like they are generally the primary decision makers when it comes to food and nutrition in the household. Yet they face numerous structural and economic barriers. And I wanted to ask you, like, from your perspective, how can national or local policies be better designed to support women in this role? And are there any programs or interventions you've seen that successfully empower them while also improving household nutrition?
Well, I'll bet you have lots of folks on this call who have great examples, so I hope they drop them in the chat and share with us. So I also want to call out that 2026, I believe, UN has declared the International Year of the Woman Farmer, and that's an incredible opportunity for us to lift up the extraordinary role women play in agriculture across the world, but also the fact that they aren't necessarily given access to decision-making or the rooms where decisions are being made that affect agriculture and family well-being in their communities. So I think part of what we have to do is talk about it. And when we talk about it, we can expose some of the very obvious structural issues that exist. So for example, women might be having to do caregiving in the morning to get their kids off to school, and they can then only get to their plot to farm hours later after perhaps their male counterparts have been able to do that. That's something that isn't necessarily going to be addressed with agriculture policy versus economic and family and caregiving policy. So I think the expertise on this call sees that probably in their work every day. And I think finding opportunities like the International Year of the Woman Farmer give us a place to really come together and push and advance these stories and where we've created barriers that need to be taken down.
Thank you. And now I want to address like the present political moment. And so I was like, we're once again entering a period where federal spending on social programs and public research in general could come under pressure. So given your experience maybe across different administrations, like, are you concerned about like how these renewed budget cuts or shifts in political priorities might affect nutrition programs? Or public sector research or the professionals behind them?
A short answer, yes. Look, I think I've been doing this for a few decades, and we see the pendulum swing when during hard economic times, and whether it's national or regionally, we'll see government lean into assisting people in need, wanting to make sure that there's food on the table. And then when things can swing back, where there's a desire to tighten the belt, and the programs that offer support to low-income communities are just come under more scrutiny, more pressure. That's the traditional back and forth. But this current moment is quite extraordinary, and I haven't seen anything like this, to revoke food assistance from extremely needy people overseas by taking down USAID and canceling programs and contracts that were life-saving, as well as proposals to dramatically cut federal food assistance to low-income households in order to pay for tax cuts for wealthy people. That kind of packaging has happened in the past, but not to the extremes that it is. So I think what we need is, and it happened with not a lot of visibility into it, right? It didn't go through a very lengthy, let's put out a policy, debate it, to consider it. It was, they rolled it out, and 24 hours later, they were marking it up and moving. So I think the public needs to insist in more transparency and more conversation to ensure that our values are being expressed through policy. And look, elections have consequences. This president has a clear mandate in many respects, but I think he is far exceeding his mandate with respect to the potential long-term destruction. And I talked about science and the pressure scientists are under at the beginning, and we could certainly spend a lot of time on that. I'm deeply concerned about the long-term organizational, institutional impact this will have. Government has played such an important role in driving science. But we can't let this happen to us. We have to see the moment and decide to step in and figure out, okay, so how do we respond or react? But I think waiting for the order of last year to restore itself, it won't happen without us. We have to be a part of the conversation and the solution.
So I'm actually gonna go off script here because of the answer, but how do you see this pressure taking place? How can this be effective in countering these this new I wouldn't even say a trend, but basically the new policies and
Yeah. Well, look, I'll give one example. I think part of it is storytelling and finding new and creative ways to lift up the incredible value of what you do or what scientists do. That I see, right, we've had quite a long period perhaps of social influencers pushing not science-based nutrition advice, for example. And now I saw for a while public health leaders, doctors stepping back and being quite upset about it, but now they're stepping in and saying, okay, I can join TikTok, I can be on Instagram and share really important, correct information, appropriately caveated information in a publicly digestible and interesting way. So that's an example of trying something new as a way to tell the story of the impact. Go where people are talking and getting information and try to join the conversation. The other is to rethink who amongst our policy leaders were engaging and how, to share the import of what's happening. It's hard work. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not like we can wave a magic wand and explain the importance of science for science sake. But I think we have to try. We have to recruit new people to the party, and it'll take a while, but it's such an important story, and it's an effective story, right? Think of all the incredible work that your network is doing to advance the lives of others.
Absolutely. It feels like we need another cultural shift. So maybe it swung on a wrong direction for a while, and we need to make sure to steer the ship
Right. And that's where I step back
yeah.
just for a second on the food system. It is a public good, but we don't treat it like that. We've treated it as a market force. And at least I think in most countries, healthcare is thought, the healthcare system is thought of something that requires government intervention to ensure that it doesn't have distortion that results in people needing care, not getting it. And I think that's really where we are with the food system too. We've got to think about it differently and make the case for it and all that that requires.
Absolutely. So for my final question, like maybe a touch of hope or like more lighthearted, for those of us earlier in our careers, especially women working in science, agriculture, public system, I think you've like already touched a little bit because of the present moment, but what advice would you give to someone who's ambitious about leadership and not like always sure they belong in those rooms?
Well, I would say if you have opportunities to try different things, so for example, even within your own organization, if there's a committee working on X, or there's a small group that's going to spend some time doing research on Y, consider that. I learned a lot by stepping outside of my day-to-day job and trying something else for a few months. Often I had to propose that idea to my boss. I would have to say, hey, there's this, group down the hall and they're going to be working. Can I spend 10 to 15 hours a week on that? That's something that happens a lot in government is folks share resources when they're doing a new initiative. But I also think it's something that we can do in other kinds of organizations. So it gives you different exposure to different kinds of leaders, different approaches. Get out of your comfort zone, I would say, occasionally. Like it's also good to become expert in what you do. And I also think it's important to say what you need. I, in addition to having a great career, I also have a wonderful family that I've raised 3 children, and it often meant saying, "This is what I'm going to need for the next 6 months. I'm going to have to leave at 2:30 3 days a week, and I'll come on in the evening. And, I think I'm worth it." or it's just what I need in order to be a great employee. And sometimes my bosses need a little encouragement and understanding on how to support me. So I didn't wait for them to figure it out. I would have to tell them.
All right, Stacy, I think I conclude my interview here. Thank you very much for the answers and for your great presentation. I guess we're moving on to Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorena, for having this exciting conversation. Very, a lot of reflections about this important. Now we will have an open Q&A session. Be ready to raise your hand, open your micro and your camera. Also, you are invited to submit questions via Slido for our distinguished speaker of today. So our first question is, where did you find inspiration? What is the more exciting? What excites you the most about your work today?
What a great question. And also thank you, Lorena, for that great chat. I would say oftentimes in my workplace, knowing that one of my colleagues is really working on something, and whether it's they're setting up a meeting or they're trying to get a paper done, or they're trying to learn how to do a particular kind of technique, and then they do, and they're often downplaying it. And I just get so excited for them. Like, you did it. And I feel like that's really important to try to bring to the workplace. And I also get inspiration from quiet. I live next to a large forest, it's not really a large forest, I guess. It's an urban forest here in DC, and going for long walks there and quiet really calms me, and I would say opens me up to wanting to engage more in all that the life has to offer.
Thank you. What do you think the future of food policy leadership would look like?
Well, I think it's going to change. I think it's been a pretty small space that's been heavily dominated by agriculture and food processors, which has been, I'm not no harm to them, but how many young people are interested and excited about cooking, who are really thinking about where their food is coming from? And so you have companies and scientists and folks from all different walks of life who want to be more connected to the food system and understand it. So I think that's interesting. But to me, the most important thing is that policy officials get excited about the food system, that governors and mayors, whatever your country's title for similar situations is that they want to play an active role in ensuring that their community has access to safe, healthy, affordable food, and that they're leveraging their power. I think historically that really hasn't happened, and it's time for it now.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So what about obstacles that you have faced during your career? How did you manage them? What is your recommendation for those people that are finding a professional during the professional development career? What are those, how to deal to those with those obstacles?
So I'd say there's probably two kinds of big obstacles. One is that you're facing a moment or a big battle, like where what you're working to advance is just hitting a wall, or so that's one kind. I think another kind is ennui and a sense of where do I find the joy, right? I've been going to work every day and it's okay, but I'm not inspired to take on something new. And I think honestly, sometimes it's good to name it. I am really name it, see it, let it happen for a while, and then you have to understand that you're in control. So if you're in a situation where there's conflict, whether that's on the policy or in the workplace, sometimes you've got to decide you're leaning in or you're going to leave. Right? It's not going to go away on its own. And the same with the ennui, or the maybe a little bit of, and I would say boredom at work, that it's like, okay, well then I have to be my own energizer. I have to be the person who's going to find the spark rather than waiting for it to come to me. And that's hard. It's hard to it can be hard to decide that I am the master of my own ship here. But give yourself some grace and then find that energy wherever it's going to be, but got to go back in and do what it takes.
Thank you so much. Here we have some more questions. What guidance would you give to the public trying to navigate the mixed messages around the health and nutrition policies in the US?
Oh boy, it's tough right now, isn't it? I think, look, I do think that we do have federal guidance right now that talks about the dietary guidelines, and we interpret those through a tool called My Plate, which shows a picture of a plate with food on it and what it makes sense. And what it makes sense to eat has really been true for many decades. Fruits and vegetables, whole grains, low-fat proteins in a limited amount, and the size of the plate, right? Keep it. I think but there's a lot of noise trying to make that very complicated. And there's a lot of noise trying to confuse us about ingredients or products on labels that we may not understand. So for now, the federal government is still maintaining this same consistent advice through the dietary guidelines in My Plate, and that is a good place to go. And honestly, finding a licensed nutritionist or dietitian can be very helpful if you've got more complicated questions. But it is a really confusing, murky zone where we have so many voices sharing with incredible confidence information about what is good nutrition or suggesting that certain things are harmful. And we may not have the time, energy, or experience to know how to go read all the studies and check on it. And so I think being dubious about information on social media makes sense for the moment.
Thank you. It says, what specific actions do you think institutions like CIMMYT, which work primarily on cereals, should lead to better contribute to public health and nutrition?
Well, I think I see you all are doing incredible work on the nutrient value and content of the products that are being grown, right, and the processing of them. And so that seems really important. Is the more rich the product is in nutrients, the better. But also in ensuring that we have sufficient food for the millions of individuals across the globe that don't have access to the food that they need to live their best life. And that's something where I think we should be working together on. But for us to champion the incredible discoveries that you have to get integrated into policy so that we don't just do the science and not act on it, as well as continuing your extraordinary work.
Yeah, thank you so much. About your daily personal, professional, what the recommendations you could give to the young mid-career professionals?
Everyday work?
Yes.
Well, try to have a little fun. I would say what I hear from the younger people I work with is they're always saying, can we get up and can we do our meeting through a walk? Can we get up and dust the cobwebs off, as we say, which I think is really great, because some days I get up and I think, I'm not sure I moved today. But my most important, I guess, work piece of advice would be make sure your calendar matches your priorities. If you look at your calendar and see a lot of things on it that don't reflect what you should be working on. So for example, like I have this great presentation today. Yesterday, I had time blocked to prepare for it. I didn't have, if you don't see that reflected, then it's time to step back and diagnose what's going on here. I'm doing all these things, but they're not really what's important to me or my organization, and make some hard choices. That's usually when I'm off balance, my calendar is not usually reflecting what I think I should be doing.
Yeah, thank you. That's balance. It's quite important. Here we have another question. As CIMIT, where should we focus our policy interventions? Lower level advocacy, middle level networks, or high level influencing top data or evidence?
Yeah, well, and ideally you do a little bit, you do some of all of those, right? You want to have deep, respectful professional relationships with those mid-level folks who really look at your work when they're looking for inspiration, or when they need an expert on topic X, they know to go to you, or when they're mulling an idea, they feel safety in being able to talk to your experts around, hey, I'm thinking about X. Do you all have thoughts on that, right? And that is, that's one level of relationship. When you know them, you also know what they need. So it's not just you coming in with, here's a research paper, do X. You can think about what their job requires and how to help them incorporate your ideas by delivering it in a way, or hitting their cycle in a way when they can more easily reflect your expertise in what they're doing. But I also think making sure that you're doing those higher touch points with policy officials as well as senior leaders. But in the end, it's always really helpful to have it timed well. I used to be baffled by people who would come in and talk to me about the budget in April when they knew the budget got the budget got announced in February. It's locked. I can't change anything. We should be talking about next year's budget. So just, I think, again, being really having someone in your organization aware of the cycle of decision making, what is the process internally for paper preparation, how regs are decided, that makes you very relevant. It doesn't just make you expert, but it makes the way you're giving it advice relevant to how they need to incorporate it. That's the most effective way, whatever level you're working at.
Thank you so much. Great presentation. Where do you see as a path of most efficiency in delivering impact and value to young researchers as they do their science?
Wow. Well, high quality, excellent work is always the best. I do believe that a commitment to accuracy and excellence really matters. And I think you can do that and still also work on translating your work and making, helping folks understand. The one thing I will say to scientists, as someone who often has to do translation, Scientists do like to spend a lot of time talking about method of their research. That is important to you all to talk about your method. Those of us who aren't scientists are less interested in that. What we want to hear is, what did you study, why, and what did you find? So help us with that. But I would always say doing consistently outstanding work in as timely a way as possible is, you can never go wrong with that.
Thank you. We are in a really tough time for non-governmental organizations globally. Any advice on how science organizations can thrive in these times?
Well, that's a conversation I'd love to get Bram's take on. And I think in some respects, we know that this will not last forever. And so in some respects, we have to be ready for when there will be a change and an openness to how to restore some of the damage that has occurred. But many of us can't survive, right, several years of waiting. And so there is also a question around pivoting to the new reality. So do we have to think about impact investing as a means to do the research versus just direct research in hard science? Do we think about, are we engaging with philanthropy where we haven't necessarily before? Problem is, we're all trying to pivot at the same time, and right, we're taking defunded groups are trying to shift and pivot. Can some of us be combined to preserve core functions? It's a challenging time, but I do think thinking you can ride it out with and that we will go back to where we were is a mistake. And it doesn't mean you have to have it all figured out, but we should still be true to who we are, right? We want to do the science. We know the work that needs to get done. So how do we adapt to a really difficult time? And for everybody who's out there struggling, I am so sorry. This happened to you. It did. But we've got to figure out how to respond in a way that continues to keep pushing the work forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we are almost getting in time to close our session of today. So what words of wisdom could you share with the audience as our takeaway? What are the main recommendations when building new policies? Any thought?
I think being evidence-based wherever you can is the most important thing. And so sometimes you have to think about delaying policy to build the evidence base to support it. One of the nice things about being in the same area for so many years is I got the benefit of research that I helped to work on maybe 15 years ago, then get to deploy it in when I was at my job at USDA to say we have really good evidence to support moving forward. And I think that's the most important thing. You don't know best. So go out and talk to others, collect evidence, test your ideas, and then at some point you've got to jump off and give it a go. But ground yourself in the best possible information. And that is a scientist's approach to the world. So hopefully that's advice that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you very much, Stacy Dean, for this stimulating conversation. On behalf of Dr. Brangovers, Director General of CIMMYT, we thank you so much for sharing with us your outstanding professional and personal journey. Thank you for being a catalyst of change.
Thank you so much. It's been an incredible opportunity. And for all that you and everyone on the call do, appreciate you.
Thank you. We also thank the audience that joined today, and we invite you to the following Catalyst of Change seminar. Thank you.
Thanks all.